Jarek Voss realized he had screwed up the moment the crate opened and a purple-skinned alien goddess stepped out, looked him up and down, and said, in a voice filled with ancient contempt, "You are the human who won me? Hells, send me back." And that's when the announcer clarified, loud enough for the entire arena to echo, "Ownership transfer complete. Congratulations, champion. She is now officially yours." Jarek did the only reasonable thing. He yelled, "Hey, no, return to turn to sender. Welcome to Helioforge Arena, the galactic coliseum where species fight for glory, gamblers lose their wallets, and poor idiots like Jarek show up drunk and leave with responsibilities." The arena pulsed with blinding lights as the crowd chanted for more blood, more chaos, more drama. Like a universal live stream audience starving for new content, giant screens replayed Jarek's messy victory, which consisted mostly of him tripping, someone else slipping, and a confused alien gladiator walking out of the ring because he thought Jarek was a hologram glitch. Even the referee had shrugged, but according to the arena charter, a win is a win, and a prize is a prize. Unfortunately, this prize had claws, intelligence, attitude, and legs long enough to rewrite entire religions Nixalia. Even her name sounded like something expensive, dangerous, and spiritually illegal. She stepped out of the crate wearing ceremonial armor that did not appear to be designed with modesty in mind. It gleamed with metallic runes, pulsed with arcane energy, and looked capable of both seduction and homicide. She wasn't chained, but a shimmering ownership band glowed faintly around her wrist, a cultural symbol, not a physical restraint. She glanced at it, then at him, then sighed like a queen disappointed with her newest peasant. Jarek, who had been drunk enough to enter the fight but now painfully sober, stared at her in terror, awe, and because he was still a man, impolite appreciation. Nixalia crossed her arms, the motion doing things to her armor that should have been illegal, then asked, "Are you planning to ogle me forever, human? Or will you say something intelligent?" Jarek said, which was, to be fair, his usual vocabulary in high-pressure situations. "That is what I thought." Behind them, fireworks blasted. The announcer screeched, "The human champion has claimed his prize. Trial-born Nixalia of the Zirian clans." The crowd roared. Jarek's stomach dropped. Prize? Ownership? Transfer? He shook his head wildly. "No, no, no. Wait, hold on. I don't do slavery." "That makes two of us," Nixalia muttered, rolling her luminous eyes. But the arena handlers had already begun scanning forms, stamping digital seals, and attaching guilt-ridden legal disclaimers to Jarek's ID. A small drone hovered, blinking red, and chirped. "Congratulations! You are now responsible for food, shelter, medical upkeep, cultural upkeep, ceremonial dress maintenance." "Ceremonial what now?" "And emotional stability." Jarek blinked. "Her emotional stability? Look at her. She's going to ruin mine." Nixalia smirked, not denying it. The drone continued. "Refusal to accept the asset will count as an offense against the arena charter, punishable by fine, imprisonment, or execution." "Okay, all right, fine, fine. I'll sign, just don't kill me." Nixalia raised an elegant brow. "Truly a warrior of remarkable courage. Please don't mock me when I'm panicking." "I will mock you exactly when you panic." "Great." His prize was sarcastic. The drone beeped. "Signature registered. Ownership bond active." Jarek groaned. Nixalia groaned louder. Then the drone added, "Bond may be nullified with mutual consent." Nixalia snapped her head toward Jarek. Jarek snapped his head toward Nixalia. "Oh, thank God," they said in perfect unison. But of course there was a catch. There is always a catch. "And," the drone chirped cheerfully, "nullification requires approval from the Zirian Syndicate, the original contract holders." Jarek froze. "The what?" Nixalia looked like she had swallowed a lemon. "The Syndicate," she repeated. "The people who placed me in the arena." "You mean like loan sharks?" "Loan sharks wish they were as heartless." "So they own you?" "They claim to. And now they're gonna think I stole you." "They will not think, human. They will know." And they're gonna get mad, indescribably. Jarek stared at the dusty arena ground. I'm gonna die, Nixalia shrugged, most likely. Super comforting, thank you. You are welcome. The announcer leaned into the mic. And now, time for the victory embrace. Jarek choked. What victory? What? A camera drone zoomed in on them. Nixalia's eyes widened in horror. Oh no, no, absolutely not. They want us to… Yes. A victory embrace? A ritual one symbolizes acceptance of the bond. Acceptance? I don't accept. Too late. The crowd chanted, embrace, embrace, embrace. Nixalia exhaled sharply. Human. Yes. We must do this ceremonially. Meaning? She stepped forward. Jarek's breath hitched. Nixalia lifted a hand and slapped both palms on his chest. Jarek froze in place like he'd been hit by a defibrillator. Nixalia leaned in, just close enough that the camera saw the silhouette, but their faces remained hidden in shadow. Perfect for faceless footage. She whispered, barely audible. Do not get ideas. This is ritual formality. Uh-huh, Jarek squeaked. Her armor brushed against him. He squeaked again. She flicked her wrist, tapping the ownership band against his chest. The ceremonial acknowledgement. The band glowed softly. The crowd exploded in applause. Jarek's brain exploded in ancient poetry, heavenly choirs, fireworks, and one very unhelpful voice saying, this woman is going to destroy you and you will enjoy every second of it. Nixalia stepped back immediately, her posture sharp and cold. Done, she said. We leave. Where? He asked. She gave him a look. Somewhere safe. You know somewhere safe from your syndicate? No, but you have a ship. Jarek blinked. I do? Yes. Wait, I do? She pointed toward the landing yard. There, sitting in the dust, engines humming, ramp half open, was a gunmetal starship with sleek curves, polished armor plating, and a glowing emblem of a crescent moon on its hull. Jarek gasped. Nixalia deadpanned. You also won that. Wait, what? The arena gives bonus prizes to first-time winners. First-time winners? This is my first time fighting anyone. Yes, she said dryly. It was obvious. Jarek stumbled after her as she began walking toward the ship. Her movements were smooth, deadly, graceful, like a celestial panther carved out of violet dusk. Where are we going? He asked. To escape. And then what? We remove the ownership bond. Good, yes, great plan. Then, she added, voice dropping, we destroy the syndicate that created it. Jarek stopped dead. We what? Nixalia paused, looking at him as if re-evaluating his entire existence. You won a warrior, she said slowly. Not a damsel. I didn't, Jarek sputtered. Do I frighten you, human? Yes, he answered too fast. She smirked, the faintest curl at the corner of her lips. Good, she said. Fear means you understand the stakes. Jarek swallowed. Yeah, but I'm also kind of terrified in a weirdly attractive way. Nixalia blinked, then looked away quickly. Her ears darkened. The Xerian equivalent of blushing silence, she muttered. But the corner of her mouth twitched. Jarek didn't miss it. They reached the ship. She pressed her palm to the side panel. The ramp hissed open. Inside, dim lights, humming engines, tension thick enough to chew. Nixalia stepped inside. Jarek hesitated. She turned. Are you coming? Jarek exhaled. This was insane. Mad. Suicidal. He had won a woman, a ship, and a death sentence in one afternoon. But somehow he felt alive. Yeah, he said, I'm coming. Nixalia nodded once. As the ramp closed behind them, the arena roars grew distant. Somewhere out in the galaxy, the syndicate received an alert ownership transfer unauthorized. Human thief detected. Retrieval squads deployed. And that, Jarek would later realize, was the moment the war began. But right now, he had one very urgent concern. Nixalia, he whispered nervously, where's the bathroom on this ship? She stared at him like he had insulted 12 generations of her ancestors. Our first act of rebellion, she said, And you ask about toilets. I panic pee, it's a thing, she sighed. Humans are a plague. He grinned weakly, but like a charming plague? Absolutely not. She walked away. He followed. The ship took off into the night, two wildly mismatched souls thrown together by chance, contracts, and one remarkably stupid arena victory, and neither of them had any idea how badly and how hilariously their lives were about to change. The human who wouldn't own her, and the alien who refused to be owned. The ship's engines hummed like a purring beast, the kind that could either cuddle you or eat you, depending on your tone of voice. Jarek Voss sat in the co-pilot seat, mostly because Nixalia shoved him into it, and tried to look like someone who knew what each button did. He didn't. Not a single one. One switch literally had a skull engraved on it. Why? Unknown. Terrifying. Nixalia, meanwhile, moved through the cockpit with frightening grace. Her hands danced over runes, her armor shimmered faintly in the low cabin light, and the curve of her body, Jarek refused to look, but absolutely looked, made focusing an Olympic-level challenge. Stop staring at the navigation display like it's a cursed artifact, she said without looking at him. I'm not staring at anything. I'm observing. Marving. You are sweating. That's my body's way of trying not to die. Nixalia tapped a rune. A holographic star map burst open like a galaxy blossoming. Listen carefully, human. The Syndicate will track the bond signature. We turned it off, right? He asked, checking the glowing band around his wrist. She gave him a deadpan look. That band does not deactivate. Only the ownership agreement does. So we're still connected? Unfortunately. Oh, he scratched his cheek. So we're kind of spiritually roommates. Nixalia stared for several seconds. Do not ever describe it that way again. Jarek saluted. Yes, ma'am. No spiritual roommates. Got it. The ship entered the upper atmosphere smoothly until it didn't. A violent jolt sent Jarek flying sideways into Nixalia's seat. He braced himself instinctively, grabbing the armrest, except her arm happened to be there. His hand closed around warm-toned alien bicep. Her head turned slowly, like a predator sniffing fresh prey. Human, she said softly. Yes? Remove your hand. Yes, he removed it. Then the ship jolted again and he accidentally fell against her, chest to shoulder, body pressed tight. Their silhouettes merged, perfect for faceless storytelling, maddening for anyone with a pulse. Nixalia let out a breath she clearly didn't mean to. Jarek felt it. He scrambled back, nearly tripping over the throttle. Are you trying to crash us on purpose? She snapped. It's a survival tactic. That is not what survival looks like. For me, it is. She slapped a switch, stabilizing the craft. The stars leveled out. His heart didn't. Jarek cleared his throat. So, where are we going? Anywhere the Syndicate isn't. That narrows it down to literally nowhere. Nixalia smirked, her eyes glinting like night over amethyst. Then we will make somewhere. The ship slid through space, the cockpit dimming to deep violet and for a moment silence. Then Jarek's stomach growled loud enough to be a threat. Nixalia raised a brow. Hungry? I haven't eaten since before the fight. That explains why you fought so poorly. Hey, she rose, armor chiming softly. Come, there is ration storage in the galley. He followed because refusing a beautiful warrior woman offering food seemed like a terrible idea. The galley lights flickered on. The room was simple. Metal counters, a humming fridge, a console for heating meals, and a table bolted to the floor to keep it from flying away mid-flight. Nixalia moved like she owned the place. Jarek moved like it would explode if he breathed wrong. Nixalia reached into a compartment and pulled out a pack of Xerian field rations, metallic purple wrapper. Glowing seal. Jarek squinted. That looks radioactive. It is nutritious. And radioactive? Depending on the species. Nixalia? She held it out. He hesitated. Eat, she said. You will need strength. For the Syndicate? For everything. He tore the wrapper cautiously and sniffed. It smelled like cinnamon, sin, and something illegal. Is it supposed to sparkle? Eat. He took a bite. For 3 seconds, his brain transcended reality. His knees buckled. His vision pixelated. His soul left his body, wrote a poem, and returned wearing sunglasses. He slammed his palms on the table. That is the best thing I've ever tasted. Nixalia blinked. It is standard military protein paste. Paste? He took another aggressive bite. This tastes like someone slow danced with my tongue. Her ears darkened again, the Zyrian blush. Your metaphors are unsettling and accurate. She turned away to hide her reaction, but her tail, which he only now realized existed, what the hell, flicked in a betraying, flustered arc. He stared. You have a tail? Yes, she said flatly. You didn't tell me you had a tail. You did not ask. It swayed, mesmerizing. Stop staring. I can't. She snapped her fingers in front of his face. Human. Yes? It is rude to stare at a Zyrian's tail. Oh, sorry. On my planet, it's rude to stare at other things. Nixalia paused. Her head turned slowly. Other things? Her voice lowered dangerously. Jarek realized too late the canyon he had stepped into. Nothing. Just different cultural anatomy etiquette. She stepped closer, closing the space between them with deliberate grace. He could feel her warmth. The dim lights cast her silhouette in curves and shadows. Tell me, human, she said, tone soft but sharp. What else is rude to stare at in your culture? Jarek opened his mouth. A sound came out. A sound that was not a word, perhaps an emotion. Nixalia's lips quirked. Interesting. Then she stepped away. A reverse kill shot. He nearly dropped the ration pack. He swallowed hard. You're messing with me. Yes, she said without hesitation, grabbing a ration for herself. It is enjoyable. Oh, thank God, he had breathed. I thought you were flirting. Nixalia choked on her ration, coughing and glaring at him with narrowed silver eyes. I do not flirt. Jin. Right, Inno, he said, smirking. So all that was just cultural conversation. Correct. And absolutely not flirting. Absolutely not. Got it loud and clear. He took another bite of ration, smug. Nixalia took another bite of ration, absolutely not smug. I don't flirt, she muttered again under her breath. Jarek heard it. He pretended he didn't. It was funnier this way. They finished eating. The ship hummed softly around them, as if eavesdropping. A soft chime sounded from the cockpit. Nixalia stiffened. Long-range scanner. Someone is tracking us. Jarek swallowed. The Syndicate? Possibly, or one of their hunters. What do? We hide. In space? Yes. She strode toward the cockpit. He followed. The scanner pinged again. The ship's lights dimmed automatically. Stealth mode. Nixalia adjusted the navigation rune, angling the ship toward a nebula swirling with cosmic dust. The transition shook the vessel. Jarek stumbled forward, straight into Nixalia. This time, he grabbed her waist to steady himself. Mistake gigantic, glorious mistake. Her body went still, muscles tightening under his hands. He froze too. No faces shown, just bodies close enough to imply heat, conflict, attraction, danger. Nixalia inhaled slowly. Human. Yes? Remove your hands. He removed them instantly. She stepped away silently, but her movements were not quite as smooth, not quite as steady. The silence was charged, electric, stupid, dangerous. Anyway, Jarek coughed. Totally normal. Absolutely fine. Zero chemistry. Just two buddies avoiding assassination. Correct, she said too quickly. He smiled. She pretended not to notice. Moments later, the ship drifted into the nebula, cocooned by swirling purple clouds. Nixalia exhaled. We are hidden. Jarek slumped in relief. Great. Perfect. Time to rest. Rest? Yeah, rest. Now, that thing non-death defying people do. She considered this. Her posture eased slightly. There are 2 sleeping compartments, she said. One for each of us. Jarek blinked. I get my own room? You expect to share? No, 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 no. I just didn't think the arena would give me luxury. You also won the ship. Oh, trust me, I noticed. Nixalia led him down the hallway. They stopped at two doors. She pointed to the left. Yours. Thanks. He opened it. It was small but comfortable. A bunk, a console, a storage drawer, and a small sink. Nixalia lingered at her doorway across the hall. Jarek noticed. Everything okay? He asked softly. She hesitated, a rare sight. Then, human. Yes, she looked at the floor, quiet, uncertain, almost vulnerable. Today has been long. Yeah, he said gently. I know. And I am adjusting to, she gestured vaguely between them, the bond. Same, a silence. Soft, uncomfortable, intimate. Nixalia took a slow breath. Sleep well, Jarek Voss. He smiled. You too, Nixalia of the Please Don't Murder Me clan. A sound escaped her, a half snort, half laugh. I do not have a clan by that name. You do now. She shook her head and stepped into her room. Jarek stepped into his. For a moment, they both stood in separate darkness, doors partly open, breathing in the quiet hum of the nebula outside. Jarek sat on his bunk and whispered to himself, do not fall for the alien woman. Do not fall for the alien woman. Do. Across the hall, Nixalia sat on her bunk and muttered, do not like the human. Do not like the human. Do. They said the third repetition at the same time, separated only by a thin metal wall. Not. Neither believed it. Not even a little outside, the nebula swirled, hiding the ship from hunters. Inside, two people who shouldn't have been anywhere near each other were beginning to become something neither had words for. And that was exactly the problem and the promise. The alert came like an indecent text at 2 a.m. Insistent, impossible to ignore, and terribly bad news. The ship's console pinged with a red banner that read, Unauthorized Bond, Retrieval Squads Deployed. A countdown began somewhere deep in the engine room, polite and remorseless. Jarek, still wearing a shirt with grease under the collar and a grin he hadn't earned, blinked at the message. They're really persistent, he said like someone commenting on a neighbor's lawn sprinkler schedule. Nixalia, who had been folding a ceremonial sash with the exacting patience of a woman who'd once unmade a marriage contract in less than 7 minutes, didn't smile. Her jaw tightened. Her ears, those delicate, expressive fins at the side of her head, flattened in a move that clearly meant business. Tracking signatures are rarely wrong, she said. We have incoming. We do? Jarek repeated, trying on bravado like a jacket that didn't fit. It rode up his shoulders awkwardly. How many are incoming? Enough to make your hair regret being attached to you, she said, which unfortunately for Jarek was a dire prophecy. His hair was already plotting a rebellion. Outside in the black lacquer of space, specks began to swell into shapes. Dots into blades, signatures into silhouettes. The retrieval fleet was professional, coiffed, and morally bankrupt in equal measure. They glided like angry moths drawn to the wrong kind of light. Jarek ran his hands through his hair dramatically. This is too soon. We've barely learned each other's coffee orders. Nixalia cocked an eyebrow. You have not asked for mine. Espresso with 3 sugars, no judgment. He smirked. What's yours? She looked at him as if evaluating whether he was a threat or a delightful error. I do not consume earth beverages. Oh, right. Cosmic decaf. My bad. War was not as cinematic as the movies. There were fewer heroic monologues and more frantic improvisation. Like using a ceremonial headdress as a makeshift adhesive patch, Nixalia issued orders with the surgical calm of someone who had been trained to be both a diplomat and a demolition expert. She punched sequences into the console. The ship folded stealth fields, smoke vents and confetti cannons, because someone had stashed one in the cargo hold for reasons that made sense at the time, were armed. Confetti cannons, Jarek asked, bewildered. For distractions, she replied, and morale. Right, morale. The first retrieval drone slammed into the ship's stealth cloak like a toddler into a goose. There was a muffled thunk, a rattle, and then a sweet, catastrophic silence as the drone's sensors tried to reconcile an ancient ritual sash with the correct orbital signature. The retrieval fleet sent a polite hail. A synthesized voice declared, surrender the asset and no harm will come to you. Jarek had thoughts. They were not good thoughts. Harm? Do they plan to harm my dignity? He asked. Nixalia made a face at him that translated roughly to, if you keep talking, I will use your ribs as storage for my spoils. Jarek shut up for approximately 20 seconds, which was a new record. Negotiate, Nixalia said. If they see diplomacy, they will hesitate. Jarek straightened and adopted his best noble idiot posture. He floated to the comm console as if walking through syrup and pressed the transmit. Hello, he chirped it cheerfully into the void like a holiday greeter at an interstellar mall. Lovely evening for a restraining order, isn't it? The fleet paused, probably shocked by someone armed with sarcasm instead of weaponry. The lead retrieval vessel pinged. Identify yourself. Name's Jarek Voss, he said, victorious in a misunderstanding of biblical proportions. A long beat of silence. Then, transfer is authorized by the syndicate's surrender asset. Nixalia's shoulders tightened. They will not negotiate, she said flatly. Then we negotiate anyway, Jarek declared, which was the space equivalent of waving a white flag made of questionable fashion choices. They prepared for contact. Nixalia lit a little ceremonial oil lamp, purely symbolic and perfectly likely to set off the ship's fire suppression, which would activate the sprinklers and create dramatic wet chaos. She handed Jarek a small blade with the kind of proud grimace usually reserved for inherited swords. If they board, she murmured, do not lose your head. Where would I lose it to, he asked, clutching the blade like someone about to carve a roast. Badly you will panic, she said, and then you will not pay attention to where your head is. Helpful. The retrieval squad decloaked with theatrical timing. Boarding clamps extended, lights flashed across the hull. Their leader, an officer in crisp, dark armor with an expression practiced in all the correct criminal arts, spoke through the speaker in a voice like a mortgage notice. And what if we refuse, Jarek asked, attempting to sound like a man who had read a pamphlet on rebellion once. Then you will be detained for violations of interjurisdictional property rights, the officer intoned. Inter what now? Jarek muttered. Nixalia took the console, fingers moving like liquid decisions. We will not surrender, she said simply. We will fight. Fight, Jarek said, then smiled foolishly. Like in sport? Do we get trophies? She ignored him because strategy required actual attention. Nixalia plotted angles, predicted boarding paths, and suggested a tactic that was both brilliant and chaotic. Turn the auction hall's public feed into an embarrassment machine. If the syndicate's reclamation could be made a spectacle of humiliation. Public sentiment might tip in their favor. Public sentiment had the galaxy's attention in weird ways, and even criminal syndicates disliked being made into memes. Jarek, inspired by roughly 30 seconds of actual bravery and 3 cups of imagined courage, assembled a ragtag defense team. They consisted of a badly tuned robot who could play accordion, 2 refugee mechanics who looked like they'd been welded together from spare optimism, and a choir of local children who were very good at chanting slogans and slightly over-enthusiastic at pyrotechnics. They were, in short, a wildly inadequate militia with tremendous heartboarding, began. Clamps latched. Jarek lurched forward with the melodrama of a man who had never seen a boarding before and might now regret everything the syndicate's boarding party spilled in. Efficient, terrifying, and wearing the sort of uniforms that never had pockets for empathy. Close-quarters combat in a faceless story is beautiful because it leaves the viewer to imagine the faces and focuses on limbs, silhouettes, and the choreography of closeness. Fists became punctuation. A hand over a mouth said more than a monologue. Nixalia moved like water shaped into a weapon. Jarek moved like an enthusiastic dog who'd been trained to fight and mostly wanted to lick faces. Instead, Nixalia's fighting style was ceremonial and efficient. She used the headdress gifted to her as both distraction and whip, its tassels tangling a hacker's visor at the perfect comic moment. Jarek improvised deployment of the confetti cannon, which detonated in a surprising glittering bloom, temporarily blinding the more ruthless mercs and simultaneously boosting morale. Glitter clung to eyebrows, to offended uniforms, to the edges of a legal document that fluttered down like a defeated flag. There was a moment when a merc grabbed Nixalia from behind and pulled hard, intending to subdue Jarek. Without thinking, shoved a plank of ship decor into the man's path. The Merc tripped, cartwheeled, and landed under a pile of discarded ceremonial robes. The sight might have been heroic if not for the fact that the robes had a very specific floral scent. The Merc woke up moments later and began weeping uncontrollably out of confusion and emotional resonance. The tide shifted when Sarah's discreet network of sabotaged ledgers, the ones she'd been folding into cranes in private, detonated as a media revelation. Screens across the nearby stations flashed incriminating ledgers and receipts. Property transfers that smelled faintly of fraud and blackmail were now publicized, and the announcement had an almost recreational enjoyment about it. People reacted the way people react to a scandalous celebrity wardrobe malfunction, with glee, righteous indignation, and a desire to cook memes. Public opinion is a weapon if you know how to wield it. The syndicate's retrieval fleet now found itself lectured by angry grandmothers in unrelated star systems, berated on live streams, and otherwise besieged by small, loud moral outrage. Their PR team had apparently never imagined their clients might get upstaged by a glitter cannon and a choir. As the skirmish drew out, Nixalia and Jarek found themselves shoulder to shoulder in the engine room, breathing hard and laughing in that desperate, ridiculous way two people do when adrenaline and affection skewer them together like a kebab. Oil smeared across Jarek's cheek in a way that looked, to Nixalia, suspiciously like a war paint he'd invented for theatrical reasons. He caught her looking and struck a pose that he thought was sexy, which in retrospect was almost certainly not. "Stop," she breathed, half order, half laugh. "You are ridiculous." "You love my ridiculousness," he said, with the kind of certainty usually reserved for people who have read too many romance serials. "Do not presume," she said, and then she smiled in a way that made Jarek's knees temporarily forget the rules of gravity. They were interrupted when a boarding hangar gave way and disgorged their leader, the officer with the voice of a mortgage notice. In person, he strode forward like a man who believed in paperwork and small cruelties. He leveled a wrist-mounted trank. "Surrender," he said. Nixalia stepped forward, ribboned headdress whipping about with theatrical menace. "No." The leader hesitated. A pause is a dangerous thing in a fight. It gives heroes time to be both foolish and brave. Jarek seized it. He lunged, not with a blade, but with an armful of poorly wrapped legal flyers. He shoved them into the leader's face. The officer sneezed. The accordion bot played a victory polka. Sarah, who had been watching from a shadowed console with the look of a woman making extremely bad poker decisions and winning, stepped into the light with a folder in hand. She tossed it to Nixalia. "They won't like this," she said simply. Nixalia opened it. Inside were documents, receipts, and legal confessions, the paper equivalent of a packed time bomb. The officer's face lost the little color it had, replaced by legal pallor. "You can arrest us," Nixalia said softly, "but you cannot arrest truth." The officer looked at the documents. The retrieval leader looked at the media streams, at the chanting crowd outside the docking bays, and then at the sudden, messy, very public spectacle his bosses had become. His superior instincts, the part of him that occasionally cared about his image, told him this was a PR disaster. Orders came through his comm. For the first time, his tone wavered. He lowered the trank. "Withdraw," he muttered. "Command says, withdraw." The retrieval squad unlatched, clamps retracted. Ships melted into the starfield like embarrassed moths. On the freighter, confetti still fluttered like the sigh of a small revolution. Nixalia sat heavily against a bulkhead. Jarek flopped next to her, both of them breathing in sync, like two people who had just survived bad decisions and better luck. They looked at each other. The smell of burnt paperwork and victory hung in the air. Nixalia's headdress drooped from its dramatic momentum. Jarek's shirt had more grease than fabric. "You were brilliant," he said without flattery, with reverence. "You were loud," she replied. "You were magnificent," he corrected. "Loud magnificence." She laughed, a short sound like a small bell. Her ears moved. It was triumphant and a little tender. In the aftermath, they discovered that war had friends who were inconveniently heartwarming, refugees who offered spare blankets, an accordion bot who insisted on playing lullabies, and a choir that had turned a chant into a ballad about property law. They celebrated like people who had won something complicated, not a trophy, but an argument. Yet the victory was partial. The syndicate had not disappeared. It had been humiliated and had retreated to plot. Jarek and Nixalia had bought time, allies, and a headline that would follow them like a jaunty, unhelpful shadow. They had also learned another truth. War was messy, necessary, and often a test of humor under pressure. They had learned that in the face of danger, they were an oddly coherent unit. Nixalia, the precise blade; Jarek, the unexpected distraction. Between them, they had created a language of gestures. A hand on a shoulder meant, "I've got your back." A smirk meant, "I will sabotage you later." And a shared look meant, "We survive, we make jokes, we keep each other." That night, after the last of the glitter was swept away and the accordion bot had finally been powered down, it crooned as it went. They sat on the starship's deck and watched the local station glow. Nixalia leaned back on her hands. Jarek stretched his legs out and sighed. "You did good," he said. "So did you," she replied. He considered this, and then, with the solemnity of a man who takes vows easily and keeps them humorously, placed his greasy hand over hers. The gesture was small, foolish, and exactly right. Nixalia looked at him, and then let her own fingers rest over his, a sign that was not a contract, but an agreement of a softer kind. Above them, the cosmos spun, indifferent and magnificent. The war would come again. It would bring new fights and new paper trails. But for now, they had bought a fragile night of peace, a pocket in which to laugh and get to know the dangerous person who'd once been a prize and had become, in quiet increments, the person he would try very hard not to own, and very poorly try to impress. The ship's lights dimmed. The accordion bot, in its last breath, played a lullaby and then failed dramatically, prompting both of them to laugh. The last sound as they fell into an uneasy, hopeful sleep was the faint chime of a message on the console. "Syndicate, we will return." Jarek mumbled in his sleep, "Bring snacks." Nixalia's hand tightened around his. "I will bring justice," she whispered, and then added, perhaps for balance, "and crescent-shaped crackers." War doesn't start with an explosion. It starts with quiet, the kind of quiet where two exhausted fugitives sit on opposite bunks across a narrow hallway, staring into dim cabin lights as if the ceiling might offer them therapy. Nixalia's door was half open. So was Jarek's. They weren't looking at each other, but the space between their rooms was charged anyway, like the air before lightning, or the silence right after someone says something painfully honest. In the low violet glow of the ship's interior, their silhouettes shifted. Nixalia brushing her hair out of her face with slow, elegant movements. Jarek fiddling with a wrench he absolutely didn't need to use at 2 in the morning. Neither slept. Finally, Jarek broke. Not because he was brave, but because silence felt too loud. He stepped into the hall. Nixalia stepped out at the same time. They both froze. "Oh," Jarek said. "Oh," Nixalia echoed. They stood there, two silhouettes, facing but not quite touching. Jarek rubbed the back of on his neck. Nixalia clasped her hands behind her back, like someone trying very hard not to fidget. I couldn't sleep," Jarek admitted. "I noticed," she said. He blinked. "You could hear me?" "You breathe loudly." "I do not breathe loudly. Your lungs protest existence." Jarek put a hand to his chest. "My lungs are doing their best." "Your best is very loud." "But charmingly loud?" "No." She said it too quickly, too firmly. The corner of Jarek's mouth twitched upward. Nixalia looked away. Before he could tease her further, the ship suddenly groaned, metal warping under proximity sensors. Nixalia's posture sharpened, Jarek straightened, wrench ready. An alert flashed across the hallway screen. Approaching vessel. Identifying. Identified, Syndicate Lieutenant. Sarah Vash requesting docking clearance. Jarek blinked. The hell is a Sarah Vash? Nixalia inhaled slowly, tension rolling along her shoulders. "She is trouble," Nixalia said. "Elegant trouble. Dangerous trouble. The kind of trouble that arrives with paperwork." "Oh no," Jarek whispered. "Paperwork." She shot him a glare. "Stay behind me." "Stay behind? I'm taller than you." "Emotionally, you are not." That's okay, fair. The docking clamps engaged, a hiss of pressure, a pause. Then the airlock slid open with a theatrical billow of mist, revealing a woman in black uniform armor, sharp angles, long strides, and an aura of, I have zero time for your nonsense. Her hair was pulled back in a severe knot. Her boots clicked with moral ambiguity. She stepped aboard and looked directly at Nick Celia with an expression that balanced affection, exasperation, and a hint of I told you so. Nix, Sarah said coolly, you look terrible. Nick Celia bristled. It has been a long week. My condolences, Sarah replied. You are still breathtaking. Jarek blinked. Was this flirting? War flirting? Ex-girlfriends flirting? Nick Celia crossed her arms. Do not use that tone. What tone? Sarah purred. That tone. Sarah smiled lightly, a weapon disguised as friendliness. Then her gaze snapped to Jarek, slicing him in half with judgment. And this, she said, circling him like a cat, is the human. Jarek braced. Yup, the human. Definitely very human. Full-time human. No refunds. She ignored him. Chura, Nick Celia warned. Behave. No promises, Sarah murmured. She reached out and casually flicked the ownership band on Nick Celia's wrist. It glowed faintly. Sarah's expression softened, as if seeing a bruise. They did this to you again, she whispered. Nick Celia stiffened. It was not voluntary. Obviously, there was history there. Deep, complicated, painful. Jarek stepped back, unsure whether to intervene or pretend he didn't exist. Sarah moved closer to Nick Celia. Close enough their shoulders nearly touched. Jarek didn't know where to look, or whether to leave, or whether this was a fight, a reunion, or foreplay. Nick Celia's voice dropped. Say what you came to say. Sarah exhaled slowly. I came to warn you. Nick Celia raised a brow. Of? Sarah reached into her coat, pulled out a data pad, thumbed it on, and tossed it to her. Nick Celia caught it with one hand. Effortlessly, like the show-off she absolutely was. The screen flickered. New bounty issued targets. Nick Celia of Zyria. Jarek Voss of Earth status, active, non-negotiable. Reward syndicate commander appointment, and Jarek's jaw dropped. They're offering a job promotion for our heads? Sarah didn't flinch. Yes, essentially. That's rude. It is business. Bad business. Indeed. Nick Celia skimmed the rest of the file, her expression darkened dangerously. They named me an asset gone rogue. Yes. And him a human obstruction? Yes. I am insulted, Nick Celia muttered. Jarek tugged his shirt. Wait, why am I the obstruction? Sarah gave him a patient, pitying look. You exist. Wow, Jarek said. Harsh, but fair. Sarah stepped closer to Nick Celia again, voice low. The syndicate is moving fast, faster than I predicted. And, she paused, they are hiring mercenaries from the Crimson Ordnance. Nick Celia's eyes widened. That is not possible. It is. Why would they? Sarah looked directly at Jarek. Because they know he is your weakness. Jarek's breath hitched. Nick Celia's head snapped towards Sarah. That is untrue. Is it? Sarah asked softly. Nick Celia didn't answer, couldn't answer. Jarek's heart thumped. Awkward and loud, Sarah moved again, circling him like prey. You must understand, human Voss. You are not the hero. You are not the warrior. You are not even the strategist. Wow, loving this pep talk. But you, Sarah continued mercilessly, are the reason Nick Celia left. The reason she defied the charter. The reason she is risking her life. Jarek swallowed. Hard. Nick Celia snapped. Sarah! What? Sarah asked innocently. Am I incorrect? Nick Celia faltered. She didn't look at Jarek, didn't deny it, didn't confirm it, just stood there. And that silence, that tiny hesitation, hit Jarek harder than any mercenary could. He cleared his throat and attempted a joke. You two practice dramatic tension in the mirror? Nick Celia exhaled sharply. Jarek! But before she could finish, the ship's console blared. Unauthorized Crimson Ordnance Fleet. 6 minutes out. Sarah's poise cracked for the first time. They moved faster than I thought. Jarek grabbed his wrench like it was a holy relic. What do we do? Run, Nixalia said. Hide, Sarah said. Fight, Jarek said. Both women turned toward him slowly. Nixalia blinked. Fight? Jarek shrugged. We can't hide forever. And we definitely can't outrun them, so fight. Sarah's expression became unreadable. Nixalia's became concerned. You fight like a refrigerator, she said bluntly. A broken one. Hey, I improved. No, he ignored her, pacing. Look, we humiliated them publicly. We embarrassed their officers, and we stole their favorite former prize. He pointed at Nixalia, who glared. So now they want revenge. We were aware, Nixalia muttered. So we give them a fight they don't expect. Which is? A stupid one. Sarah looked intrigued despite herself. Nixalia pinched the bridge of her nose. Explain. Jarek spread his arms. Use me as bait. Nixalia's entire posture froze. No. Absolutely not, Sarah said simultaneously. You both said no at the exact same time. Cute. Sarah shot him a look that could melt tungsten. Do not test me. Nixalia stepped in front of Jarek, stance protective, voice low. You will not serve as bait. You are not a shield. Nix, I said no. Her tone was steel wrapped in fire. Jarek felt something warm bloom in his chest. Nixalia noticed it, swallowed, looked away. Sarah crossed her arms. He has a point, a stupid point, a dangerous point, a point nonetheless. Nixalia turned a slow death glare on her. He is not bait. He will never be bait. Sarah held her gaze. Then millions die because they will tear through stations until they find you. Nixalia faltered. The internal war behind her eyes was visible even in silhouette. Duty, honor, responsibility, and something else, something personal, fragile, terrifying. Finally, she exhaled. Human, she said quietly, what exactly is your plan? Jarek looked at the two women, then at the ceiling, then back at Nixalia and grinned. You so see, baby. They move fast, ridiculously fast. Sarah rerouted false ship signatures. Nixalia armed ceremonial weapons that absolutely shouldn't have been legal. Jarek strapped on a mismatched armor set that made him look like a spacefaring handyman. The Crimson Ordnance Fleet drifted into view. Sleek, predatory ships designed by people who obviously didn't believe in mercy. Sarah guided Nixalia toward the cockpit. Remember, she murmured, this is your fight, but also his. Nixalia nodded once. Jarek stepped to her side. She hesitated. Then, in a small motion that felt enormous, she touched his forearm. Not a warrior's grip, not a comrade's reassurance. Something gentler, frightening, real. Do not die, she whispered. Wouldn't dare, he whispered back. The fleet hailed them. This time the voice was not businesslike. It was hungry. Return the Zirian asset, return the human, and your deaths will be fast. Jarek smiled wildly. Nix? Yes? Release the fog cannons. Nixalia hit the switch, and everything exploded into chaos. Confetti cannons, fog machines, strobe lights, rogue ceremonial banners, a hacked broadcast feed, a screaming alarm that played holiday music, Sarah yelling in 3 languages, Nixalia cursing in 5. And in the middle, Jarek, standing like a man with no idea what fear was. The enemy fleet flinched. Jarek yelled into the comm, "We don't do ownership here, baby." And the war truly began.